to thank everybody. You know, this is the first of a series of speaking events that we've called No Limits. And what we're trying to do is, it's part of our leadership program at Oceanit, but it's really open to more than just Oceanit. We're trying to get people acquainted with others that have thought out of the box, that have thought with no limits, and actually changed things. And so we're very honored today to have with us Chris Lee. And you're going to hear about him. I'm going to ask him to spend a little time talking about himself, but I just say a little bit. He's the former president of production for TriStar Pictures and Columbia Pictures, and is now at the University of Hawaii building essentially a Hawaiian version of a film educational program, and he'll tell you about that. But I just thought he's produced, you know, I was watching the TV a while ago, and there was a movie, I'm trying to remember the name of the movie, but at the end it had his name. Produced such Academy Award. It was a
Final Fantasy?
Yeah.
Jerry Maguire.
Final Fantasy, Jerry Maguire, Philadelphia, As Good as It Gets, a whole bunch of different films. A real creative thinker, and a product of Hawaii. And I think you know, it's interesting that what we're finding is that one of the things we've got to do is redefine the way we look at ourselves, and the things that we can do and the contributions we can bring to the world. And I think Chris has done a lot of that, and I think it really exemplifies what we're doing with No Limits. So without any further discussion, I'd like to welcome Chris Lee.
Touchstones in my life. But I'm a big believer that kids today, growing up, and most of this room is relatively young. I saw the little blurb I got that I would be meeting with highly educated individuals. I don't know how many of you have kids, but maybe you have nieces and nephews and stuff. And you know, the reality is they live on the computer. They grow up in the media world. They create their own languages in chat speak. They communicate with one another in ways that we couldn't imagine when we were stuck with Smith Corona typewriters, and that's about it. And they are able to create things and articulate their creativity in ways that in a purely text-based society was not possible. So one of the things that I do on a regular basis is about once a week I go out to guest lecture with students. And I don't just mean at University of Hawaii, I go out to as many schools as I can. And the school that I've gone to the most is Waianae. And Waianae I was introduced to by Senator Fukunaga back there, who's done a lot, along with Senator Ige and others, to really promote a center of excellence based on media education, and through the good works of a particular teacher named Mrs. Candy Suiso. They have transformed the image of Waianae from one of a highly at-risk community to one that's a very involved and very active and very forward-looking community, where they're actually doing work in the private space as well as the public space, and you just go out there and have this sense of students with a sense of mission. And it's very impressive. And on my darkest days of when I'm dealing with the bureaucracy that is UH, I always return to the students because they remind me of why I was doing this in the first place. And I see so much promise in that. But unfortunately, if Hawaii continues to be just an incubator for the mainland, then there really won't be much reason to establish a program that I know is going to have a lot of sexy appeal. And in fact, we have so many students applying right now, we're not sure what to do with them. So the other thing is that when people talk about film school, it's a nice sort of narrow definition. It's easy to understand. But technology is transforming media so quickly, and transforming entertainment so quickly, and transforming education, and transforming medicine so quickly, that what we're seeing is a new, reading on papers over the internet over the years, some of the other ones like Digital Island and stuff have become successes, but ultimately have had to move back to the mainland. And the reason they do that is because they are always in search of larger capital markets. And intellectual property industries are based on human capital. It's based on our ability to harness the intellectual capacity of our students. And what I see in Hawaii is not just a great place to live, but a highly creative place to live. But that's not a paradigm that could apply to our kids. But this is where technology comes into play again. Technology has become so small and so compact, and all those cameras that you take pictures of your keikis of and stuff like that, those are all the things that are available to students today. That's why they call it Spielberg Nation. Because they get their hands on these and they start telling stories. And so I don't think I could have tried to do this even 5 years ago. One of the methods that we're going to introduce is something we call digital Toolbelt. And digital Toolbelt is basically a laptop, probably going to be a Mac. I'll have to look at this procurement system here. I should figure all this out. But a Mac with the software in it for script writing, for editing, for animation, for illustration. We marry it with a small digital camera. There's actually a new Sony one coming out that records directly on the DVD for 1 hour. Goes directly into the laptop, and then you can start working right away rather than having tape and then transfer over and be left with the tape. The value of this, though, to me is this. Oh, and we wrap it into this thing called digital Toolbelt, and we underwrite it in a way that we make it a requirement so that students can use financial aid, but we lease it as a package to the students at a lab fee basis, like at $25, $50 a month or something. And we're going to figure out a way to underwrite it so that everybody can, as many we can accept, can do this. And at the end of 3 years, they can buy this package for $1. Now, for me as an institution, I'm not left with obsolete technology. But more importantly, the students no longer have to be stuck with the old brick and mortar process of going to a lab space, checking out equipment, working on it, checking it back in. The reality of our students, of course, at University of Hawaii is 90% of them have jobs. We are a commuter school on every campus, and it's an economic necessity that we are. And I know that the students are going to do their best work in the middle of the night anyway. Now, they don't have the luxury of traditional liberal arts college where everybody's in dorms and you can go in and out anything you want. But even if you did, you still wouldn't be able to have full access. So what this does is it creates what we like to call 24/7 education. And it's not that they're necessarily learning 24/7 a week, but they have access to education 24/7 a week. Now, to tie this all together, we'll be creating a very sticky village website, a virtual campus, because I want the students in Hilo to be showing the students in Leeward what they're working on. I want them to be talking to each other. I do enough guest lectures to know there's 3 kids are going to talk to me and the rest of them are going to say a word when I ask questions. But I know that once you put kids behind their screen names, they can't shut up. And I think the ability for them to communicate and to have these forums, and kids today, I think the average amount of time kids are online is 3 hours. What it comes down to is, how do we get companies here in Hawaii that are in this field? And again, I come back to this notion of Hawaii being a creative place, and I go back to what I learned from talking to my friends who were from Square and stayed here, and why they came here, and what they liked about it, what they liked about the lifestyle, and what the value was. And I think in a knowledge-based economy, and particularly in a post-9/11 world, the choices that you make are largely dictated by how and where you want to live your life. And this is where Hawaii has a tremendous advantage over so much of the mainland. And even though we see so much of IT moving to places like India and China, and there's no question that those countries are going to be the behemoths in this area, you really got to hang on to those people that aren't just pushing buttons, but are being creative, that are being producers, that are being... University itself is a wonderful institution and can be a far better one if we believed in it more and spent the appropriate resources on it. Because if you look at Silicon Valley, if you look at Massachusetts Technology Corridor, if you look at Microsoft in Washington University, if you look at AOLB down in Virginia by Virginia Tech, there's a huge difference between where industry decides to move itself. And I'm talking about where industry is going today. The American industry has to be knowledge-based, because manufacturing is something that this country does not do anymore. And if you look at all those states out there, I was listening to NPR and they had a report on, I think it was Wisconsin, and like the master lock company finally moved to Mexico or something and just wiped out the economy for half the state. There's no way to stop that process. It is always going to be cheaper and more efficient for corporations to manufacture overseas if it's something like that. And increasingly, intellectually based industries like IT, like calling centers, you know, when I call AOL's call center, I know I'm talking to Sri Lanka. I mean, I can tell from that accent. It's not fooling me. I'm not talking Virginia. So, increasingly angry at me as I can't do the most simple task for her. But I went up to Pixar recently because I really admire their films, and we're going to set up a program so our students can apply to be interns up there. And in general, I'm trying to set up internships at all the studios. I talked to them actually about even opening a satellite facility here in Hawaii. And they said, well, you know, we really like everybody to be in the same place because it allows us to have that control over the creative process, but it also allows us to get that input from our employees. So even though I think a lot of things will be shipped overseas, I think the actual inherent creative process itself will remain in places hopefully like Hawaii.
Latest issue of Harvard Business Review that talks about globalization. It says that you can succeed by focusing on one of three areas. One is manufacturing, where it makes sense because of labor and materials. One is connections, places like Switzerland. One is the creative process. And I think that's really where Hawaii can be successful. And it's very interesting. You know, they have no stake in Hawaii, but when I was reading that, it's very consistent.
If we do anything right at this new school, it's going to be our emphasis on storytelling. And whether that narrative is used for virtual surgery and bioinformatics, or modeling the islands and taking the island back in time and moving it forward. It's all about storytelling. And I think that that's what hopefully we're going to be able to share with people at the university, and you know, all of us that are kind of the little team that I'm building, they're all sort of like true believers, and I think you have to be in this atmosphere.